Friday afternoon, the night before my first middle school dance. It was early May, and unlike here in Rhode Island, the weather was gorgeous. I was getting ready, which really just meant trying to find a pair of socks that matched. Hidden in my sock drawer was my Mother's Day present, a pair of green dangle earrings. I had never bought my mother a gift before, so I was very excited to give it to her. I thought that it showed maturity, and I was pretty proud. I mean, I was in 6th grade. It was about time for me to grow up. As I took the earrings out of my hiding spot to admire them one last time, my mom walked in. I wasn't very coordinated back then, so I wasn't able to hide them in time. Even though I had to give them to her just a few days too early, she loved the present and gave me one of those smiles that just warms you up from inside to out. I felt amazing. Going into St. John Newman's cafetorium that night, I felt invincible. I had a sweet new shirt on. Even though its red and white stripes made me look like a candy cane, I didn't really care. I had a great time that night. I was too giddy to find fault in anything. Being the baller that I am, I danced with all the girls in my class and even a lot of my older sister's friends, which was, by all accounts, really, really cool. After the dance, I went to my friend's house with a few other guys, and we stayed up till 1 in the morning playing Halo 3, which was a lot of fun. The next morning, when I got home, my grandmother's car was in the driveway, which was a little weird. When I got inside, my mom sat all us kids down and told us that Dad died last night. I have to go back a week from that Saturday. My father was diagnosed with lung cancer 3 years earlier, but my parents never told us. Obviously, hospital visits were a pretty common occurrence for him. So to me, they had become pretty routine. That morning, I asked my mom when Dad was coming back home, completely expecting a positive response. She started to cry a little and told me that he wasn't coming back. I wasn't a dumb kid. I knew what she meant. Later that morning, we went and saw my dad in the hospital. He was an absolute mess of a man. Lying in that hospital bed, he looked so sick, so tired, and just broken. I could honestly hardly recognize him as my dad. My sister went in to give him a hug, and he screamed out in pain like I had never heard him do before. The cancer had spread to his shoulders. I could see that he was in great pain, but I was afraid. I was afraid to look at him. I was afraid to talk to him. I was afraid to even be near him. I only stayed for a few minutes that day, and I never went back to see him again. He was alive for another week, and I never went back. I could hardly even think about him, to be honest. I just decided to pretend that he wasn't dying, and I just lived in that fantasy for as long as I could. After he died, I couldn't pretend anymore. Since he was Jewish, custom dictated that he be buried within a few days. His funeral was on that Sunday, Mother's Day. My mom wore those earrings that I gave her just a few days earlier, the ones with the green dangles. I hated that. When I purchased those, I was carefree and fearless. Now my world was shattered. But I mean, I was in 6th grade. It was about time for me to grow up, after all. I did grow up that day. I didn't really have a choice. My new maturity, based in the tragedy, gave me a fair amount of clarity and understanding over my father's death. It wasn't fair. It was just plain terrible for a man to die before his work on earth was done. And I knew what he regretted most was not being able to see my siblings and I grow up. It wasn't fair for us either, having to go through life without a father. However, I realized that of all the injustices, me not going and visiting my father again was by far the worst. I was selfish, going to the dance when I knew my father was dying. I was afraid, and I let that prevent me from doing what was right. I was a coward. I feel so incredibly guilty, and there was nothing I could do to fix it. You can't apologize to a dead man. There are no makeups when death is involved. What happened, happened, and I have to go through life knowing that I hurt somebody who I love just because I was afraid to face reality. It's easy to know when you've done something wrong. You jump into one too many bushes, you try to make a joke at the international student dinner or in a group chat. But mistakes like those aren't so bad. Everyone does dumb things without thinking. You live and learn. By making such mistakes, you actually grow wiser. I learned something different because I was thinking. I knew what I should have done, but I didn't do it. To put it simply, listen to your conscience. When you know what's right, do it, no matter how difficult it might seem in the moment. It'll be a lot easier than living with regret for what you didn't do. Thank you.